Hi, everyone, and welcome to Accordance Commentary Survey. I'm Abram Kielsmeyer Jones, and we're going to spend the next hour together talking about how to access commentaries in Accordance. Before that, we'll do kind of a general strategy around commentary usage, but we'll demo some particular ones in Accordance, talk about how to efficiently and effectively use those, and lots of hyperlinks in the handout today so that you can see the ones that I'm recommending. We'll really be doing kind of two parts today. The first is going through some particular commentary categories that we might want to consider in building our commentary library. And we'll dip in and out of particular commentaries along the way, but we'll make sure to have a second part today where we're comparing commentaries, opening multiple commentaries all at once for a particular verse, just to see in action what these different categories might look like, what it might mean to take a different or a particular approach from a commentary and apply it to a verse. We'll leave some time for questions, and of course you can ask those along the way. In the GoToWebinar control panel, there is a questions section. Just make sure that that arrow is pointed down so that you can see that, and you can put a question in there at any time. We'll do typed questions today. You can type them in. I will see them, and I will either share them anonymously with everybody and answer them, or I might reply privately to you. My email is abramkj@accordancebible.com. That's here at the very bottom of the handout. Just want to make sure folks have that. And I also share that in case you're watching on a recording afterwards. You can email me and I'd be happy to send you the handout if you email abramkj@accordancebible.com. And as I mentioned, those of you who are here live, we are recording today. So if you're here live, that means you're signed up, which means you'll automatically get an email with a link to the recording, as well as a copy of the handout so that you can replay it if you wish. If you're here live, you can also get the handout from the handouts section of the GoToWebinar control panel. Let me know if you have any issues with that, and otherwise we will plan to begin. It can take a long time to build a commentary library. What you see in my library has been built up over the last, I don't know, 12, 13 years in Accordance in particular. And of course, we may have print editions as well. But I'm thinking in terms of 6 broad commentary categories, and these maybe have some overlap, and there's probably some other kinds of commentaries, other ways to think about them, but this shapes my thinking and I find it helpful. Let me just give an overview of the 6, and then we'll go in depth with each. First, I'm thinking in terms of a general 1-volume commentary, and that's something that would cover the entirety of the Bible, so that whatever passage I'm in or whatever book I'm in, I know that there's something in there. It may not be very long, it may not be very detailed, just by nature of what a 1-volume commentary is, but then I can be assured that whether I am reading through a gospel or delving into a minor prophet like Nahum, there's going to be something in there, even if I don't have a Nahum specific commentary. Second, I'm going to talk today about technical commentaries. Those have to do with exegesis of original language in translation. Apart from the original language, they do, just as the name suggests, they're more technical, they're more detailed, they get into things more at the word level, at the semantic level. What does this word mean? Where does it come from? That kind of thing. We'll also look at Bible background commentaries. That gets us into historical and cultural context. And then specialized commentaries. That has to do with specific approaches to reading the Bible. We'll also talk about devotional commentaries. That is theology in application. So not just what does this passage mean, and if the technical commentary and the Bible background commentary unpacks what it meant then, a devotional commentary may get more into the questions of what does this mean now for me and for the community in which I live. And then finally, we'll talk about teaching and preaching commentaries. So how would you present this text? Let's begin with a 1-volume commentary. I've got 2 here that I mentioned. One is by Eerdmans, the other is by InterVarsity Press, New Bible Commentary. And this is a great starting place with commentaries. You're going to get an overview here. You'll get some level of detail, and it will vary from book to book, even within these commentaries. But let me show you these two. I've hyperlinked to them in the handouts. They're open here, but let me show you via the library. If I go to my library here, which you can toggle open or closed via your window, I'm going to type in Erdman's commentary, and here it is. This was copyrighted 2003. And you can see here, it's open to Psalm 23, which is where I just was. I don't have to scroll very long before I get to the end of the Psalm. So this is pretty substantive for a one-volume commentary, but you can certainly imagine more being said about Psalm 23, and even some of these other Psalms may have less. In fact, in a one-volume commentary, you're more likely to have things treated together, whether that's multiple Psalms, or you might have a couple parables treated in one paragraph. So this gives you a sense of the scope of it. It's, again, it's going to cover everything at some level, but it may not be particularly deep. Although, again, you may also find exactly what you're looking for in a one-volume commentary. Just to get a sense of this, in Psalm 23, this is going to talk about how it's structured and how you might outline the psalm, talking about the poetry of it. And then again, it's just not, you're not getting verse by verse comment here. It's jumping right in at 23:4b, with your rod and staff, they comfort me. That's, again, part of the scope of a one-volume commentary. The IVP commentary is called the one volume. There, New Bible Commentary. That's the name I'm looking for. You can see here an even shorter passage on Psalm 23, and every verse is covered, but 1 through 3 are covered together remarkably with 3 sentences. Now, I don't think anyone involved in the publication of this commentary would agree that that's all there is to be said about those verses. But the scope of a one-volume commentary is to be very broad, to cover everything in the Bible, but it may not be able to go very deep. If you're trying to decide whether to get a particular commentary, you'll want to think about, what are your criteria? Do you want something from a particular theological or denominational point of view? Do you want something that takes a particular interpretive approach or avoids others? Those will be questions that you'll want to think through, and that you'll probably pretty easily be able to come up with answers to. The best commentaries will tell you at the outset what they're about. And so even with both of these, if we just go all the way up here, you can see with Erdman's, you'll get a preface that will talk about what the approach is. How do we think about the Bible? How do we think about interpretation? And if you don't own a commentary, if you go to the product page, you'll typically get a pretty good write-up that will, at least at a basic level, answer this question. Same with the New Bible Commentary. But once you have the commentary on the preface, you can get a sense of what it's about. In fact, here's a distinctive of Erdman's. It is the only one-volume Bible commentary, at least it was at the time of its publishing, to cover all the texts, including the Apocrypha and First Enoch, regarded by one or more Christian churches as canonical. Now, that is not the case with the New Bible Commentary. It does not have the apocryphal or intertestamental or deuterocanonical literature that you would not find in the Protestant canon. So that's a consideration. If you're looking for those books, you want to go to Erdman's. But it talks about exactly how it's written. So it's focusing on the principal unit of meaning rather than attempting verse by verse analysis. So if we're thinking about evaluating commentaries, if you were writing a book review on a commentary, of course, you would want to review it on its own terms. Is it accomplishing the aim that it set out to do? Not the aim that I have for it, although, that's a fair critique to make for yourself, I suppose. You want it to do certain things, but commentaries, there's just so much to comment on and so many ways to do it that by definition, they have to limit what they do or focus it. And so this one tells you clearly that this is the kind of commentary this is. And you'll see a similar comment in the IVP New Bible Commentary. Hopefully you'll also find some sense of what's the theological approach that these commentators take. And you'll find that often in the preface. And again, if you're trying to discern whether you want this particular commentary, the product page will often speak to this. And if not, it may be a look inside preview that you can just find online. I've also linked at the very end of the handout to the Accordance forums. That's a great place to go if you just follow that link. Just to if search the commentary you're looking for, someone's probably posted about it. And if not, you can just say, hey, I'm looking for this. I have these questions. What commentaries would be good for me? Or I'm looking at these 3 commentaries. What do you think? And you'll get user answers pretty quickly, usually, to respond to that. So whether it's Erdman's or New Bible commentary or something else, I would start with a 1-volume commentary so that you've got something for everything. And the way to access that, by the way, if you go to reference up here, you'll see different search fields here in the commentary. If I'm preaching on Psalm 23, I can just go in and type Psalm 23. It will take me right there. If I am then preaching on, let's say I want to see what do you have on First Maccabees, I can, well, first I need to spell it correctly. I can go right there by searching in the reference field. So these are pretty quick to get around. You can also open up the content sidebar right here and browse through to see what they have. Let me close my library window. So here's Erdman's. As promised, you've got Old Testament here, New Testament here, and then the distinctive, you've got Old Testament Apocrypha. And then the books are listed here, so you can see what's listed there. You can also just browse through and make your way to a book that way. Let me note just one more thing about these 1-volume commentaries. As broad as they can be sometimes with a passage by passage overview, there are also just some excellent articles at the beginning. They're maybe not as long as you could find somewhere else, but you're going to get topics like, how did we get the New Testament? What is the genre of what's here? Or what about the Gospels, and how do they connect to each other? And why are they written in Greek if people were speaking Aramaic? Lots of really interesting questions addressed in this 1-volume commentary. I continue to be pleasantly surprised by the level of detail that I find, even in these overview articles in these 1-volume commentaries. You'll see it here in the New Bible Commentary as well. You've got a whole section on how to interpret the Bible. And again, the best commentaries will own the fact that they are coming to the text with certain commitments and presuppositions and from a certain background, and they'll own what those are and name them, and even so will do their best to interpret the text in a fair and responsible manner, and in a manner that is faithful to what the text is saying and trying to do. So just to note again with these 1-volume commentaries, especially if you've got some in your library already, I would recommend just taking some time to see what's in these articles. Even just the book introductions will have a level of depth sometimes that you might not expect to see in a 1-volume commentary. All right, let's move on. If we've been broad and not very deep, we're going to get very deep now when we move into technical commentaries. If you've got questions about 1-volume commentaries, either the ones we looked at or something else, you can type them into the questions box, and I'll catch up on that in a little bit. For technical commentaries, I'm thinking in terms of exegesis of original language and translation. This for me is probably the first place I go. I may go first to a 1-volume commentary if, for example, I am working through a book. Let's say I'm going through the book of Jonah. I am probably going to start with a 1-volume commentary. I'll probably just type in the reference and get right there, maybe read the introduction, maybe look through and see how they outline it, although I might also just read it on my own, outline it on my own, and then see what outline I've got here. But again, with the 1-volume commentary, as brief as they can be, relatively speaking, there's still a level of depth here that is helpful. So I may start there, but once I'm ready to get into a book, the book itself, like Jonah, I will go to a technical Commentary. And I've recommended 5 here. That we have more than 5, but the first one is the New International Commentary on the Old Testament. And I'll just briefly open each of these. And you can see I've got some individual volumes, and I also have the series now. I need to clean up what's in my library because some of these are older editions, but you can see here what's available. This is a set that's a series that's continuing to expand. And there is some original language that if you know original language, it's helpful here, but it's not required. I mean, you can see just briefly glancing through this text, with or without Hebrew, this is pretty technical, pretty detailed, but you can see here some Hebrew transliteration, which again, it won't keep you from getting a lot out of this commentary if you don't know Hebrew, but if you know it, it will certainly help. And it is a place to go. These technical commentaries are the place to go if you want to look at questions like, what does this Hebrew word mean here? So that's the New International Commentary on the Old Testament. Anchor Yale is another good technical commentary. NIGTC, New International Greek Testament Commentary, I've linked to that as well. Kregel and the SIL Exegetical Summary series. If I go to Kregel, let me see if I've got the Book of 12. Yeah, I sure do. So I can go to Jonah here, and here you'll see, and commentaries are different just depending on what the publishers want to do. But here you can see actual Hebrew characters. And just to give you a sense, I mean, when we're talking about technical commentary, usually you're going to get the translator, or I should say the commentator's own translation, which is great, and they're going to say why they translated it this way, which you won't really necessarily get from your own favorite English translation. You might in a note. The New English Translation, the Net translation is really good about that, but here you're going to get the author's translation with pretty detailed reasons for why they translated certain things certain ways. You're also going to get textual variants. So here you've got the great city and call against it in the Septuagint, preach in it. And he's probably, I'm guessing, going to talk about why there might be a difference there. But even just this superscription in Jonah 1:1, he's going to start commenting on in detail from the very beginning. These technical commentaries are great. They're not for the faint of heart, but they're also not ones, again, where you absolutely have to know Hebrew or Greek to use them. You'll get better use out of them if you do, but you can see here, I mean, much of this is recognizable characters regardless of whether you know Hebrew or Greek. It's just something that's going to require greater attention, but that may be exactly what you're ready to do. Maybe having done a broad overview of Jonah, maybe having read through the 1-volume commentary introduction, maybe you're ready now to go in detail verse by verse, and any of these technical commentaries I think will help you do that. And again, if your focus is on original language, these ones are really good, especially Kregel and New International Greek Testament Commentary. I find those to be strong. And we've got other commentaries along this similar line too that you could find in the store. Let me mention just one other series, and then we'll pause for questions. The SIL Exegetical Summary series. If you have been to my Mark Translation Notes webinars, you know that I frequently use this. This is not complete for the entirety of the Bible, but where there are volumes, and there are more New Testament volumes than Old Testament volumes, but it is just very thorough, and hyperlinks to every kind of major commentary probably that you can think of. I'm sure there are some omissions, but here, for example, just dive bombing into Mark 1:1, how is the word Christou, Christ, used here? And so it's a technical commentary. You've got the Greek here, but it will summarize different translations and different commentaries. So here's Anchor, here's Cranfield. Some of these we won't even have in accordance, but it will summarize them and kind of catalog the different interpretations. And sometimes they do differ, but they're all right here. in a very summarized way. And then you can go from there to the individual commentaries if you want to. But this, I think of it as a meta commentary. Not in the sense that it is a commentary on the commentaries, because it really doesn't do much by way of evaluation, at least not on purpose. It doesn't say this commentary says this commentary says this, we think this one is the best. Any commentary that goes in depth will do that. This one just lists them, as the title suggests. It summarizes the different possibilities, and it will usually set them apart by numbers so that you can see these are potentially different views, and then it just leaves you to make up your mind or not, but you've got a very concise summary of what lots of commentaries say. And the thing I like about this particular series is that you don't have to own any of these commentaries to make good use out of it. If you do, it's even better, I guess, because you can go look at them in depth. But if you just wanted to know, how are people interpreting this, your question is answered right here on this screen without you're even having to open these different commentaries to look. So this I recommend, and again, I would put it under technical commentaries. It gets pretty detailed, but even if you don't have original language knowledge, you'll be fine here. But it does begin specifically with the lexicon, going through the different Greek or Hebrew words, as the case may be, for the couple of Hebrew Bible volumes that it's got. Let's pause there and just check in and see what comments or questions folks might have. We've just looked at one volume commentaries, and then we dove right into technical commentaries. We'll move next to Bible background commentaries. Again, I'm operating, this is sort of akin to my actual workflow when I'm methodically going through commentaries, but I'm not terribly fastidious about what order I go in, and you may have a different approach that you prefer anyway. You may want to go to background right away before you get into Greek and Hebrew, and so this is, hold all of this loosely, take what's useful, leave what's not. Any questions before we move into some Bible background commentaries? I'm recommending just one, although there are more, but the IVP Bible Background Commentary, which is also a one-volume commentary, one volume for the Old Testament, one volume for the New Testament. And it's somewhat technical, but it's really, I think, pitched at a more general audience, and it's just what it says. But the background, both historical and cultural, are there. I'm going to go to that commentary, IVP background. Let's take the Old Testament one, and let's go back to Psalm 23 and see what we've got there. Now, unlike even the other one volume commentary, you'll notice it's really not meant to be a one-stop shop, one volume commentary, which these first two are. It's meant to be what it's called Bible background commentary. So you don't even have an introduction to Psalm 23 in this commentary, because it's there to provide historical, cultural background. So what you don't get, for example, is that comment that we saw, I think it was in Erdman's. This is one of the most loved, quoted, and trusted Psalms in the biblical canon, or something like that, and maybe a little bit of reflection on that. It just dives right in, and not even to verse 1. So be aware of that, and that's why I think using commentaries in tandem in a strategic way can be especially helpful. But it talks about the needs of sheep. And also, this verse here is hyperlinked. So when I don't even have my Bible open, I would if I were, slowly going through this on my own, spending the afternoon on it. But it also hyperlinks to the verse. So I hover over it, and I can see in the instant details. I could also click on that, and it would open it in my default Bible text. So I can see what the verse is. So if I've just jumped in as I have now, I can hover over it and see the verse. So he takes me to lush pastures. He leads me to refreshing water. You're going to get a comment there on sheep and what water looks like for them and what they need. Use of rod and staff, anointing with oil. All of these phrases are familiar to people who know Psalm 23, but they may not be culturally familiar. You may not remember the last time you saw somebody with a rod or a staff, or maybe you did recently, but it's, I'm here in Boston in 2025, and typically that's not a sight that you see very often. Anointing with oil, that too, I mean, we might do that in a church setting, but this Bible background commentary is going to give you what the first readers and listeners of the text would have known, which is like, here's how it works with sheep and the rod and the staff, and here's where the rod goes, and here's what they used it for, and these were the traditional tools of the shepherd and that kind of thing. So this is an excellent commentary that both the Old Testament background and the New Testament background. And again, I just want to go back to that question of strategy and scope. There are a lot of verses that I suppose you could say they're missing or they're not treated, like where's 24:3, where's 5 and 6. That has less to do with, I think, space limitations and more to do with they're about the historical and cultural context, and there may not have been something in those verses that the commentators thought really needed to be addressed, or maybe they did have to cut it for space. But you will not see something like here. Psalm 28 is not in here at all. But where there's something that probably is a question for you, like what about these cedars, or what is the desert of Kadesh, chances are that's going to be treated here, and in a pretty succinct way. So you can, of course, go further with this. You could click on the word Kadesh. If this line here isn't enough, you could right click. You could go to look up in something, or you could even go to research and look for Kadesh in everything in your library, and it will show it to you everywhere. So you're not limited to whatever commentary you have open at the time. Again, we want to understand what our commentaries are for, what particular ones can do, what their limitations are, but you're really just a couple of clicks away through research, the research feature. You're just a couple of clicks away from looking up anything in much more detail in everything all at once. So I could go within just a couple of clicks to see Kadesh in all of my dictionaries, all of my commentaries, all of my Bibles. So even though we're doing this in kind of an atomistic, isolated way, do recall that it's really easy to get at all of your other resources and lined up in one particular tab with just a couple of clicks. Let's talk about specialized commentaries. This, again, is specific approaches to reading the Bible. And so that might be a denomination-specific approach. That might be the two suggestions I have here are the New Testament use of the Old Testament. That's a very specific way of commenting on the Bible. So anytime the New Testament uses the Old Testament, there's going to be commentary on it. It is exceedingly detailed. This particular commentary will talk about what was the original Old Testament text that's at play here. How has it been used since then? And how is it being used now? So if I just scroll up, I'm looking at Psalm 22 here, for example. This is when you get to Mark 15. And again, just like the historical, the Bible background commentary, notice not everything's covered here, but that's because there are lots of places in the New Testament where it's not using the Old Testament, but wherever it is, you're going to get this level of depth. So for example, you've got, my God, why have you forsaken me? Spoken by Jesus on the cross, quoting Psalm 22. Here it groups it with some other quotations of Psalm 22 in Mark 15. And you get the New Testament context, you get the Old Testament context. You also get how was Psalm 22 used in Judaism, because there is a gap, or not a gap, but there is a history from the time that Psalm 22 was written up to the time where Jesus said it. I mean, we're looking at a good 1,000 years there. And so that's going to address that, and then the use of that passage in Mark. So having established its historical background, having established the history of interpretation, how is Mark using it? Which is also going to answer the question, how is Jesus using it? Theological use. I mean, if there were ever a New Testament use of the Old Testament that required some kind of theological understanding, it would be this one. And so this commentary will treat that. Very specific use case, but anytime you are looking to unpack the New Testament use of the Old Testament, this commentary is just excellent. It's very, I mean, whether you agree with all of its viewpoints or whatever in terms of scope and detail and just what it's after, I mean, it is just excellent. It was actually, I think, the first commentary outside of the basic collection. I think it was the first commentary I had in Accordance. And it's very long. I mean, if you see a print edition, I suppose we could look at the page numbers here, but it's something like, I don't know how many pages, but it's a very big volume, and it's great. So that's New Testament use on the Old Testament, and that's just one way of thinking about how you read or comment on the Bible. There is the Ancient Christian Commentary let me get the whole title here. I'll go to Ancient Christian Commentary. Ancient Christian Commentary on Scripture. So this is another particular approach, and you might just go to the Accordance store and just search commentary and browse through, and you'll see there's like a Reformation commentary, but this Ancient Christian Commentary spans commentary from 95 to about 749. So if your question is, and maybe you didn't even know you had this question, but now you do once you hear it, if your question is, how were people interpreting the Bible for the first, 8 centuries since the canon, or since the New Testament was written? The canon was completed after that, but what kinds of interpretations were present then? Is it similar to how people would interpret the Bible today? Are there some differences? And you'll probably even get some comment on that will, I mean, it won't be, super detailed, but it is going to talk about how these particular authors went about interpreting. But then what you've got is basically a compendium. It's a curated, you could think of it like the SIL Exegetical Summary Series, although maybe less detailed. You've got a curated set of quotations from different authors on particular passages. And this one covers, I believe, I think it covers the entirety, complete. It covers the entirety of the Old Testament and the New Testament. So you'll have everything here. It may have a particular verse it doesn't comment on or a particular phrase, but this is pretty thorough as well. So if your question is, how did the early church understand, or more than just the early church, I mean, we're talking about almost not quite a millennium, but how did they interpret different things? This is a place to go. So Psalm 23, for example. And it has an overview section too. Sorry about the quick cursor. An overview section. So before it goes into the list of quotations from Psalm 23, it gives you a clause or so summary of who it's got, what they're saying. You'll notice a lot of Augustine, at least here. This is also helpful because if I don't remember who Jerome was or when he wrote, I can hover over any of these names and you'll get a bio here in the instant details. Those are two specialized commentaries that you might consider. Like I said, there are others. If you go to I'll just show you the place to go in the store, but accordancebible.com, and you will find, well, you could even just go to the search bar there on the website and just search commentary. But you might have a particular kind of commentary that you're wondering, here's another 1 volume, well, 2 volumes technically, but is there a Pentecostal tradition commentary? And there is something along those lines that you'll find there. But you can go to the store and search for particular things you might be interested in. I know that's a very quick look at two very detailed commentaries, but I just wanted to point those out as examples. And this probably for me, I have this listed as number 4. This may actually come more toward the end of my research process for what that's worth, but sometimes I find really helpful quotations or illustrations there, especially in this ancient Christian commentary, that help me not only understand the text, but try to convey it to others. We'll move on to devotional commentaries. Let me check and see if you've got comments or questions. There are 2 commentaries I suggest here for devotional commentaries, and that's a funny word. And what does it mean for a thing to be devotional? I mean, in some sense, every commentary, I mean, it has some theology in it. The question is really, is this commentator trying in the writing of it to make connections to today? And you will not see a lot of that in the technical commentaries. Although, again, any blanket statement I make, any generalization, there's always going to be exceptions. For example, R.T. France's New International Greek Testament commentary, although it's technical, and although I think his intention is to unpack the Greek, being a pastor as he was, you will inevitably get some real life application, or some today application, I should say, Kregel too. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt, but there are some commentaries that are more focused on that, and so they will spend less time on a Greek word study or the historical background or whatever else. They'll still maybe have it, but the focus will be, or one of the focuses will be, how does this apply today? Tyndale and Bible Speaks Today are 2 good examples. I have used the Tyndale commentaries. I have been using Tyndale commentaries well before learning Greek and Hebrew, and they're excellent. They, in fact, although I would consider them devotional commentaries, they still have a good level of detail on the text. Let me open up the Tyndale commentary. If we go, for example, to, why don't we just try Micah 6:8 and see what's there. So we've got How to Stay Alive, and this is Bruce Waltke, so of course this is going to be detailed. He's got a great commentary on Micah. But this is in print. These are individual volumes, so they feel freer, as you can see here, to go into more depth with a particular passage. And so you'll see in this commentary a pretty good mix, actually, of everything we've looked at so far. There is some technical, there is some historical background, but maybe a distinctive is that you're going to get more by way of how does this actually apply today to you or to the people that you're sharing this passage with. You'll find that detailed too, either on the product page or in the introduction. The Bible Speaks Today is similar. Its very title gives away that it is after how the Bible speaks today. So even just honoring God by our worship, well, Deuteronomy, I mean, there's a historical context there, but it's making the link to today. So based on worship in Deuteronomy 12, what might constitute acceptable worship for, quote unquote, us, whoever the us is who's reading the text. And you can see some very application specific stuff here. But both of these commentaries are interesting, both Tyndale and Bible Speaks Today. I would also add the NIV application commentary. They're all interesting because even while they are saying things like from biblical text to contemporary life, there still is a ton of detail on the biblical text itself. So even while I'm putting different commentaries into categories, I think most commentators can't resist doing at least a little bit of every kind of approach, at least as much as is possible, because maybe it's their one shot on that one text, and they want to be responsible interpreters. So you're not just going to get application without the exegesis, you're going to get both. But you will find more application in what I'm calling a devotional commentary, or something that is more theologically oriented. So Tyndale, Bible Speaks Today, NIV application commentary. Those are some options to consider. And then the last category I want to talk about today, just very briefly, is something like a teaching or preaching commentary. And by the time you've made your way through even a few of these commentaries and have looked at the text, you probably would have a pretty good sense of how you might present the text in a group setting, whether large group or small group. But there is this one commentary, there are some others too, but Teach the Text, that is specifically about how, again, as the title suggests, how would you teach this? So it has a big idea for a passage. It highlights its key themes. It does the what did this text mean then to them question. And then it does the what does it mean to us now? How would you teach it question? And then there's even a separate section on illustrating the text. Let me show that commentary. Teach the Text. So it's got, there are volumes for Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. It is not complete. In the last I was aware, this was a discontinued series, sadly, and I do not know of plans to resume it, and anything could change at any point, but so it's not complete now, and I don't know that it will be. But what is there is great. Here, for example, let me just scroll up and see where we are. We're in 2 Corinthians 5:16 through 21. So this, he has given us the message of reconciliation. And if you want to hover over the passage or click and hold, you can see it here. You'll get a big idea. You'll get some key themes. And you may, by the time you reach for this commentary, you may have this on your own in your notes, but then you'll get brief contextual comments, a section called interpretive insights that may go verse by verse. It may not, it may go passage by passage. This one's pretty detailed. And then theological insights, that's the bridging the gap from yesterday to today, and then you teach the text. So how would you teach this? What are some possible options for teaching this? And so you might get a one sermon suggestion with multiple points, or the author might say, here are some different directions. So much of what's here, I not to downplay what's great about this commentary, but a lot of this other content, I might have already come across something like it in Tyndale or Bible Speaks Today, or even my technical commentaries. What's really unique, though, is the illustrating the text. So here's grace should be a catalyst toward transformation. So you've got this well-worn, oft-told story from Les Miserables by Victor Hugo about Jean Valjean stealing the plates and the bishop, and I'll just mention that there. That's something that, you know, maybe as a preacher you feel like your people have heard that enough times, and so you pass it, or maybe you'd never heard it and want to share it, and so that's there. Lyrics, musical, it's art sometimes is in here, stories, different illustrations. So that would be specifically for presenting the text to others, or if you just yourself want to have a deeper understanding of the text. I find that illustrating the text section can help me with that personally, whether or not I'm sharing that particular text with others. Let me stop there for comments, questions. Those again are some categories. If you are curious about a particular category, or if you, especially if you think I might have missed one, I'd love to try to find a particular kind of commentary if someone has questions about. But typically these are the terms I think in, the categories I think in: the one volume commentary, more detailed technical stuff, Bible background, specialized commentaries, devotional commentaries, teaching, preaching commentaries. Let's see what comments or questions you have. We'll pause for a few minutes for that. Oh, great, thanks. Someone put in the, I'll share this here in the chat. Someone says, Teach the Text has 18 of the 39 Old Testament books and 12 of the 27 New Testament books. Thanks for sharing that. And you should be able to find that. I think that's on the product page. But yeah, I've really appreciated this particular commentary. Any other comments or questions? What we'll do now is move to, oh yeah, here's a great question. Thanks. Let me actually hold what I was just saying, and I'm going to respond to this question. My thoughts on the word biblical commentary. Yeah, I would think of that as a technical commentary. And this one I have made great use of over the years, certainly in seminary when I was writing exegesis papers, and also when I've been preaching. Um, it is definitely detailed. I mean, it's an interesting commentary in the sense that it begins with an extensive bibliography, which I think is just an indication that this really is a research level commentary. I mean, not that it's only an academic commentary, but it is more oriented that way. So the very first thing of any section is going to be its commentary, or its bibliography, I should say. So whether you want that or not, it's there. And then it moves to a translation, author's translation, highly detailed. And this is one thing that I particularly appreciate about this commentary. You're going to get, yeah, like here, for example, I mean, it is, even with language commentaries, sometimes it can be hard to find comment on the language, or maybe your question is not being answered, but this one is pretty good. I mean, even here, you've got a Hebrew suffix being commented on. I mean, that's an attention to detail that I appreciate if I'm after, if I'm reading this in Hebrew and have already had that question, why is this suffix here? So that I think is a great strength of this commentary. You can see all the notes here just to get a sense of that. That's probably the primary way that I use it, but also, I mean, you've got form, structure, setting. So this may be a level of analysis that you do with the text. It may not be, but even with narrative, I mean, you would expect this with the Psalms, but even with prose narrative, you've got outlines that are understanding how this might be like what we would call a chiastic structure. So A, B, C, B, A, or not. Maybe there's some parallelism. That's going to be in here. Yeah, this I think is one of the more thorough commentaries that's out there. And it's one that I do appreciate. I may, with any commentary, I may find myself agreeing or not with a particular interpretation, but I don't always agree with myself. So that I think that's going to be inevitable with the commentary. The approach here, I think, is yeah, pretty academic, but also, I mean, it's not exclusive of a devotional or homiletical approach. I mean, I think there is some consideration of that, but yeah, I think highly of this commentary. If you've got other specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. It's not cheap. I mean, some of these technical commentaries, that's a downside for us users, is that we're often waiting till they go on sale, or but the word biblical commentary is available as individual volumes, and I mean, you can see that I've got and I had that in New International Commentary on the Old Testament too at one time. Maybe I'm preaching through Jeremiah. I'm just going to get that volume, and that's more palatable price point. So that's something to keep in mind for this particular commentary too, if you're considering it. But great question, and thanks for asking. Feel free to ask a follow-up. Yeah, someone else says I've used it for decades and has the hardback books. Yeah, they look great on a bookshelf. That's the one, I guess, one of the losses of having it digitally but not in print. But maybe you've got it both. There's some commentaries you may have them and want them to be able to search as well. Great question. All right, so let me just very briefly show you what this looks like in action for me. I've broken it down to these individual categories, but of course, I mean, I do think in these categories when I'm doing research, but really how I think when I'm researching a text is this. I think let's get my text open. Let's type in my reference. So here's Revelation 1:8 for the sake of what we're doing. And now I open up an info pane from Add Parallel. And I know I'm doing this kind of quickly. We have, if you go to Help and Webinars here, we have a lot of pre-recorded webinars, including one on the info pane. But from the info pane, you can access all your commentaries. So at this point, what I would do is I would consider, I might even do an order like this. I might start with a 1-volume commentary. So here's New Bible Commentary. So Command click to open in a new tab, and you can see here Revelation 1:8 is treated as part of a passage, so I'm gonna have to scroll forward here, but I'll just leave that for now. Go back to technical, let's say Anchor Yale. So let me find that here on my list of commentaries. It's somewhere in there, maybe toward the bottom. Just keep clicking show more until it shows. There it is. So Command click. And then I would continue on with, let me get the Bible background commentary open. I'll just stop there for the sake of demonstration. Now, and I don't want to bore anyone with detail, but I do want to explain why I'm all of a sudden in Revelation 1:1. When these tabs tie to each other, not every commentary has a Revelation 1:8 per se. I mean, it has Revelation 1:8 in it, but it may not have that heading. And so this heading is Revelation 1:1 through 8. So it reset my text back to Revelation 1:1 because of the 1. I can just go here and hit Revelation 1:8, and it will fix that for me, basically. So this is still where the prologue is, 1:1 through 8. But if there's a 1:8 in these other commentaries, it will go back there. I'm not opening all of these now, but this is the point then at which I would read through the different commentaries in whatever order. And just to give you a sense of the different approach these each have, I'm going to want, with this Alpha and Omega, I'm going to definitely want a technical commentary that's going to tell me, like, maybe I know what those letters are. I don't need help with the Greek, but maybe I need to know, why are they used here? What does it mean for somebody to be the Alpha and the Omega? And so you've got some comment there. Your technical commentaries, probably all of them will have that. The Bible background commentary will go even farther than that. It will say these are the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet, and what that means is, eternal and ruled over all time. But you'll also get the point that this happens in Hebrew too, and you've got hyperlinks to different passages. So you're going to get a little bit of a different flavor depending on what commentary you open. But this info pane is really how I access this. Again, I'm thinking somewhat in these categories, but chances are I'm just going to be looking through my commentaries and make sure I've got something for each particular approach. So I'm going to want something technical. I'm going to want some Bible background. I might just scan this for, oh yeah, there's my ancient Christian commentary, open that up. And then I've got a series of tabs that I can read through on a particular verse. And this is what my workspace will look like as the springboard for the extended research that I'll do. Let me again just show that under Help, Webinars, if you go to Western Hemisphere friendly, that's where you'll find the ones that I lead, and you will, here we are right now. Just scroll down a bit, you'll find an info pane webinar, and that will talk more about how to use this, and you can even organize the order of your commentaries. If you've got questions about that, let me know, but we've also covered that in other webinars. But you might even take some time to order your commentaries so that you've got your top 5 showing, whether it's categories like this or some other way, so that they're always what show up at the top of your info pane. That will save you time for future research. Let me stop there. That's all that I've got to share today. I'm happy to use the last couple minutes for comments or questions if you've got them. Yeah, let me just anonymously put this comment. Somebody says WBC primarily evangelical, but could get a bit more liberal than I am. Yeah, and I've heard that from other users as well. I think, yeah, broadly evangelical. Although whether they would own that title or not, I'm not sure. I know that the 1-volume commentary from IVP specifically positions itself as an evangelical commentary, and then it wants to explain what it means by evangelical, not evangelical in a kind of cultural political sense, but in a theological sense. So yeah, again, you know, the best thing I think to do here is just to consider, I mean, you know where you're at theologically, consider whether you want something that aligns with that. The late Dr. Timothy Jenny, who used to do podcasts, always talked about how he, you know, he would find commentaries that would kind of line up with him, and he would read commentaries that took a different approach just to see what people are saying. And I know a number of users take that approach. You may not want to do that, or you may, but again, I think the point here is see if you can figure out not just the category that it's in, but yeah, maybe there's something with the theological commitments you just want to get a sense of. And the best way to do that, I think, is to see if you can get the preface either through the product page, because these commentaries generally, I mean, I don't know that any of these commentators have anything to hide. I think most of them will say, this is where I'm coming from. I own that. Here's the commentary. So it's not like you'll have to search really hard, but you may also just go to the forums, accordancebible.com/forums, and say, hey, I'm in a mainline tradition. Hey, I'm in a Pentecostal tradition. Hey, I'm in a conservative evangelical tradition, and I'm looking for things that line up with what I believe or that challenge what I believe. What do you suggest? I've seen a thread like that probably every few months on the forums. So you may find one, or you could start one, accordancebible.com/forums. I'm going to end the recording and stay on for just another moment for logistics. And if you've got any other questions, that's great. If you are watching on a recording, again, abramkj@accordancebible.com, email me and I will send you this handout. And thanks for watching today.